Artist-designer Lisa Congdon lives and works in Portland, Oregon. She didn't start creating art until she was in her early 30s. She is self-taught and now 18 years later is a professional artist who has wrote and illustrated 7 books and worked for clients such as MoMA, REI, Harvard University, and many more. Her book, Find Your Artistic Voice: The Essential Guide to Working Your Creative Magic, focuses on what an artistic voice is, its evolution, and what can be done to help it thrive. Your artistic voice is your own point of view as an artist. It includes your style, skill, subject matter, medium, and consistency. It reflects your unique perspective, life experience, identity, and values. It reflects what matters to you. Your voice is formed over time through continuous experimentation and intentional practice. It is formed from following spurts of inspiration and intuition down long paths of development. Style is the look and feel of your work. It includes things like how neat and precise your work is or how loose and messy it is. It includes whether you make work that is representational or abstract. It includes the marks you make in your work and how those marks are repeated. The elements of style are line, shape, layering, color, texture, composition, rhythm and movement, and pattern and repeating imagery. Skill is an essential element of artistic voice. With greater skill, you'll create richer and more visually complex work, and you will have a much easier time communicating your ideas and emotions through visual imagery. Doing something well means that you have the technical abilities to execute with consistency because you practiced a lot. Of course, having skill doesn't mean that you won't ever make bad work. Experimentation and failure are a part of the creative process for everyone. While most subject matter is externally focused, landscape, narrative scenes, objects, and so on, what we are drawn to rendering is deeply personal and different for every artist. Much of what we are drawn to is based on what we've been exposed to in our lives, what surrounds us, what has influenced us. Our education, native country, political affiliation, sexual or gender identity, culture, religion, race, ethnicity, sense of privilege. Our choice of subject matter is influenced by our sense of morality, our values, and our ideas about what is right and wrong. It's influenced by what we find beautiful or fascinating or even repulsive. The word media is the plural form of the word medium. Your media are the substances and tools you use to give expression and form to your voice. These can be digital or real world tools, things like paint, graphite, textiles, ink, paper, wood, clay, cameras, computer software, and audio equipment. Typically, you choose a medium or combination of media because you enjoy working with them and they most effectively express what you are trying to communicate. The media you choose influence your style and the mood in which you work. Employing different media uses different parts of your brain and keeps things interesting in the occasional monotony of the art making process. Challenging yourself to develop skill in one medium develops your skill in all media. Discovery of a medium's possibilities or limitations happen every time you try something new. The final key component of voice is consistency. Consistency is basically another way of saying that you repeat elements within your works. Similar subject matter, the same media, and elements of style like color, patterns, lines, and markings. As such, your work is identifiably yours. When you settle in on a set of elements, things like style, subject matter, and medium, you make work that follows a set of unwritten rules: a consistent use of positive and negative space, a consistent color palette, subject matter themes, and consistent lines and shapes. The consistency in your work is the ultimate expression of your voice. When you find that your work begins to use consistent media and subject matter and has a consistent style over time, this is evidence that your voice is emerging. Finding your voice is a misleading term because it sounds like arriving at a destination. It implies that once you have found your voice, you have made it something final that will remain unchanged. But in reality, the voices of all artists continue to change over time. simply by virtue of the fact that when we work consistently, evolution happens. We have new ideas and new inspirations. We develop new skills and we try new things. Sometimes these changes are very subtle, and sometimes they are intentional and quite dramatic. For that reason, instead of arriving at a final destination, finding your voice is entering your own orbit where you are floating around in your own circular path like a planet orbits around its own sun. Your creative voice is your superpower. When you have developed your voice, you have the power to create, along with the power to influence others, and the range and flexibility to express your own point of view with dexterity. Your voice is your story, and your story matters. If you aspire to have a career as a professional artist, your voice is going to be a very best friend in that endeavor. While having a strong artistic voice alone doesn't ensure professional success, your voice is a necessary element towards sustaining your artistic career. Your voice sets you apart from other artists but allows others to connect with your work, to either purchase it or pay you to make more of it. For professional artists, this cycle needs to repeat itself over and over and over. Demand for your work is essential to sustain a career, and a strong voice is an essential element in the formula for sustainability of a professional career. The stronger and more distinct your artistic voice, the more likely you will seize opportunities like gallery shows, grants, residencies, illustration gigs, and licensing agreements for both original art and products. Everyone's artistic path is different, but there are some predictable phases on the path that we all share. The path is never linear or smooth. In fact, it can seem like a bumpy, repetitive cycle. The 5 phases on the path are the spark, the ongoing desire to create, risk taking and experimentation, questioning, and creative flow. As we cycle through these phases, we are sparked with inspiration. We experiment and fail. We push through and achieve something great. Then inevitably we bump up against new walls, question our work again, but manage somehow to land in a period of great flow. We cycle through some phases over and over. Understanding where you are in the cycle is useful because that understanding can help you anticipate where you might be headed next. It can also help you understand that any messiness you are experiencing is completely normal. It can help you to hang in there and persevere, even when you feel like you want to quit. If you ask anyone who is on an artistic path to go back to the very first thing or set of things that ignited their interest in making art, they will usually be able to tell you. That's because we all begin our creative journeys with some kind of initial influence. This is referred to as the spark. Your spark is simply a moment or a series of moments that inspired you to want to make art or to become an artist. It's the moment when you first felt a deep connection to some form of art or to the creative process. After the initial spark happens, it can happen over and over again, often after you make new discoveries that light you up and make you want to go down a different creative path. These sparks are magical because they make us feel inspired and give us the urge to create. Once the spark is experienced, most artists develop the desire to keep creating over and over again. It's almost a compulsion. That desire is essential because without it, creativity can't manifest into anything tangible. It's possible that you occasionally lose the desire to create or that you wax and wane through periods of desire and indifference. If you're not feeling the desire for a prolonged period of time, it's important to consider whether the current expression of your creativity is really what you want to be doing, or whether instead you should change things up and be making something else or working in a different way. Listening to your internal desire is critical to staying engaged with the creative process. At first, the urge to create takes the form of experimentation, trying out our ideas even when we don't know how or where they will go. Experimentation is where creativity comes to life. When you are experimenting, you are not just thinking about or talking about your ideas, you're actually trying them out. When you first start something, it can feel uncomfortable. It can even feel risky. When we have an idea for what we want to create, the end result we envision is often so far from what we have the skills to do. So we get overwhelmed and feel almost immediately defeated. That's why many people, even when they first had the urge and begin to experiment, quickly abandon projects because their risk level far outweighs their skill level. As an artist, we need the stamina to work through the first few years of experimentation and become comfortable with the discipline of experimentation and the importance of failure. We need to let risk and experimentation become part of the process. Deadlock or insecurity are completely normal for artists. Not only are they normal, they can be really positive if we don't run away from them and if we confront the questions they force us to face. If we stay with our uncomfortable feelings, they can be really helpful, and we can usually get to a place of flow again in our work. Sometimes periods of intense questioning is a signal that we need to temporarily walk away from whatever is irking us. We need to take some time to reckon with this period of questioning. We need to force ourselves out into the world, into nature, visit museums, go to places that inspire us, brainstorm new ideas, make lists of things that interest us, delve into books and films. All these things can help an artist fall back into a period of creative flow. When you are in a period of creative flow, your concentration is laser focused. Your self-consciousness disappears, you lose track of time, and your ability to create something out of the ideas in your mind happens with ease. Experiencing prolonged creative flow is an indicator that you're developing your creative voice. It can take years to get to a place where you experience regular periods of creative flow, and that's because when you are in learning mode, you're not yet fluent in your subject matter, style, or medium. It's like learning a new language. Learning implies a certain amount of struggle, frustration, trial and error. But once you learn or master something, the struggle lessens and flow happens more frequently. Practice leads to your voice. Showing up and making art every day is great, but practicing is next level. Practice is about honing in on something specific and then practicing that thing over and over. Set a routine. Putting boundaries around our time can help us to feel more in control of both our workload and the time we set aside for experimenting. Setting a daily routine is important because the most direct route to cementing your technical skills and developing your voice as an artist is by doing your thing as often as you can for a designated period of time. As creative people, we have lots of ideas. Our minds are swarming with them. But we also know that getting from our ideas to a final piece of art is a messy process, and that knowledge can make us feel overwhelmed, sometimes downright terrified. Fear, while it can make us feel incredibly alone, every human experiences it, but it is also an integral part of the creative process. Making things and putting them into the world are requisite acts to finding your voice, and these acts often feel scary. And fears don't disappear as we venture further down the creative path. The good news is that those uncomfortable feelings are not going to kill you. Feelings of anxiety and defeat can actually serve a purpose in helping you find your voice, if you begin to expect them and manage them as a necessary part of the creative process. Every artist was first an amateur, wrote Ralph Waldo Emerson. We watch other artists from afar and make the faulty assumption that they have been as skilled and prolific in their talent since the day they began making art. In 99% of the cases, that's almost never true. Most artists, even your heroes, were once beginners. They made bad artwork, struggled with technical skills, blundered, felt lost, and questioned their work. Even as experienced artists with fully formed voices, there is still struggle. They still face learning curves, make mistakes, feel fear, and sometimes don't know where they're heading next. This truth is one of the most important things to remember as you work to develop your own voice as an artist. Developing an artistic voice is not a miraculous process reserved only for a few innately talented people. Every single person who chooses to embark in a creative path has to work at it. The unfolding of your voice requires showing up and working hard, requires being willing to create failures, ask for feedback, and to go back and try it all over again. It requires staying open. It requires moving outside what's comfortable and being vulnerable. This might feel daunting, but if you are willing to do that work, you will develop your artistic voice. If you commit to working your magic, it will lead to extraordinary things. Your voice can transform lives, disrupt the status quo, change the conversation, shift mindsets, lift spirits, and offer comfort or connection to people who need it most. Your artistic voice is your superpower.